Hello there, and welcome to Sleep Science, where curiosity gets cozy and the microscopic becomes magnificently peaceful. Tonight's gentle journey takes us into a world so small we can't see it, yet so vast it surrounds us completely. We're going to drift together through the quiet, extraordinary realm of bacteria, those tiny beings that have been whispering the secrets of life for billions of years. Before we begin our microscopic wandering, feel free to share where in the world you are listening from and what time it is. Now, when most people hear the word bacteria, they might think of germs, illness, or something to scrub away with soap. But tonight, we'll discover something far more wonderful. Bacteria aren't just tiny troublemakers. They're ancient storytellers, essential partners, and quite possibly the most successful life forms our planet has ever known. They've been here far longer than us, and they'll likely be here long after we're gone. So close your eyes if you like, take a gentle breath, and let's take a slow, peaceful wander into the invisible world that makes everything else possible. In the beginning, there was bacteria. Not quite as poetic as other creation stories perhaps, but far more accurate. Long before flowers bloomed, before fish swam, before the first bird took flight, bacteria were already here, quietly going about the patient work of being alive. Picture Earth 3.8 billion years ago. A world so alien, it might as well be another planet entirely. The sky wasn't blue, but a hazy orange-brown, thick with methane and carbon dioxide. There were no forests, no grass, no familiar landmarks at all. The surface was largely barren rock, punctuated by shallow seas and the occasional volcanic eruption. It was hot, toxic, and utterly hostile to anything we might recognize as life. And yet, in this seemingly impossible world, something remarkable was stirring. The first bacteria emerged not despite these harsh conditions, but because of them. These early pioneers, called prokaryotes, were magnificently simple beings. Just a single cell with no nucleus, no complex internal structures, just the bare essentials wrapped in a protective membrane. Think of them as life stripped down to its most elegant basics. DNA floating freely in cellular fluid, a few proteins, some ribosomes for making more proteins, and that's about it. No fuss, no complicated machinery, just the fundamental spark of existence, quiet and determined. What's truly astonishing is that these ancient bacteria didn't just survive in their harsh world, they began to change it. Some of the earliest types, called cyanobacteria, developed something revolutionary: the ability to capture energy from sunlight. This process, photosynthesis, was life's first great innovation, and it came with an unexpected side effect. As these bacterial pioneers basked in the sun and converted carbon dioxide into energy, they exhaled something new into the atmosphere: oxygen. Now here's where the story gets beautifully ironic. Oxygen, which we think of as the breath of life, was actually toxic to most early life forms. When cyanobacteria began pumping oxygen into the atmosphere around 2.4 billion years ago, it triggered what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event, essentially Earth's first pollution crisis. Many existing bacteria couldn't handle this new corrosive gas and died out. It was an environmental catastrophe of unprecedented scale, caused by tiny organisms just trying to make a living. But life, as it tends to do, adapted. Some bacteria learned to tolerate oxygen. Others figured out how to use it for energy. And still others retreated to oxygen-free environments where they continue to thrive today. The atmosphere gradually filled with this reactive gas, creating the conditions that would eventually allow more complex life, including us, to evolve. Every breath you take is possible because ancient bacteria spent billions of years slowly, patiently terraforming the planet. These early bacteria were also incredibly inventive in other ways. They developed the ability to eat almost anything: sulfur, iron, methane, even radiation. Some learned to live in boiling water, others in ice, still others in acid so strong it would dissolve metal. They colonized every conceivable niche on Earth, from the deepest ocean trenches to the highest mountain peaks. They became, in essence, the planet's first great experimenters, testing every possible way to extract energy from their environment. And they were social creatures too, in their own quiet way. Bacteria developed sophisticated methods of communication, sharing genetic information through processes like conjugation. Essentially, bacterial networking that allowed successful adaptations to spread through populations. They formed biofilms, complex communities where different types of bacteria collaborated, each contributing specialized skills to the collective effort of survival. Perhaps most remarkably, bacteria invented almost every fundamental life process we see today: photosynthesis, cellular respiration, nitrogen fixation, fermentation. All of these were bacterial innovations that occurred billions of years before plants and animals arrived on the scene. When more complex life forms eventually evolved, they largely just borrowed these ancient bacterial technologies, sometimes incorporating entire bacteria into their cells as specialized organelles. The mitochondria in your cells, the tiny powerhouses that generate energy from oxygen, are actually ancient bacteria that took up residence inside other cells billions of years ago. The chloroplasts in plants that capture sunlight are descendants of cyanobacteria. In a very real sense, we're all walking ecosystems, communities of cells that include billions of bacterial partners. For roughly 2 billion years, nearly half of Earth's entire history, bacteria had the planet to themselves. They spent this vast stretch of time refining their craft, developing resilience, and laying the groundwork for everything that would follow. They learned to cooperate and compete, to share resources and information, to adapt to changing conditions with remarkable speed. They became, without any grand plan or conscious intention, the foundation upon which all other life would eventually build. So when we look at bacteria today, we're not just seeing simple microorganisms. We're seeing the descendants of Earth's first inhabitants, the humble architects of the biosphere, the quiet engineers who spent billions of years preparing the world for more complex life. They are, in every sense, our elders, ancient, wise, and utterly essential to the continuing story of life on Earth. If you were to shrink down to the size of a bacterium, and what a strange, wonderful journey that would be, you'd find yourself in a world governed by entirely different rules. Imagine becoming so small that a single drop of water feels like an ocean, where molecules bump into you like gentle, constant rainfall, and where the very act of swimming becomes a dance with physics itself. Bacteria are, at their heart, beautifully simple. Each one is essentially a tiny bag of life, enclosed in a flexible membrane that keeps the important bits in and the unwanted bits out. Unlike the cells that make up your body, bacterial cells don't have a nucleus, that central command center where our DNA is safely tucked away. Instead, bacterial DNA floats freely in the cell's interior, coiled into loops and tangles like a microscopic ball of yarn. This might seem chaotic, but there's elegant efficiency in this arrangement. Without the need to build and maintain a nucleus, bacteria can dedicate more of their resources to the business of living, growing, reproducing, and responding to their environment. They're like master minimalists, keeping only what they absolutely need and doing away with unnecessary complications. The membrane that surrounds each bacterial cell is a marvel of molecular engineering. It's not just a simple barrier, but a selective gateway that controls what comes in and what goes out. Nutrients flow in, waste products flow out, and the whole process is managed by proteins embedded in the membrane like molecular doorkeepers. Some bacteria even have multiple layers of protection, with sturdy cell walls that help them maintain their shape and survive in challenging environments. Inside this tiny space, and we're talking truly tiny here, roughly 1,000th the width of a human hair, bacteria pack an impressive amount of molecular machinery. Ribosomes, the cellular factories that build proteins, dot the interior like microscopic assembly lines. These proteins then go on to perform countless tasks, breaking down food, building new cellular components, defending against threats, and communicating with the outside world. What's particularly remarkable is the sheer diversity of bacterial forms. Some are perfectly spherical, like tiny living marbles called cocci. Others are rod-shaped, known as bacilli, resembling microscopic capsules. Still others spiral through their watery world like corkscrews, aptly named spirilla. Some bacteria even form long chains or clusters, creating elaborate geometric patterns that would make any mathematician smile. But shape is just the beginning of bacterial diversity. These organisms have evolved to thrive in virtually every environment on Earth, and each niche has shaped them in remarkable ways. Some bacteria have developed whip-like appendages called flagella that they use to swim through liquids with surprising grace. Others glide across surfaces using mysterious mechanisms that scientists still don't fully understand. Some can even move by extending and retracting parts of their cell membrane, like microscopic amoebas. The size of bacteria varies too, though they're all impossibly small by our standards. The smallest known bacteria are so tiny that hundreds of them could fit inside a single bacterium of average size. The largest bacterial cells, while still microscopic, are giants in their world, visible to the naked eye if you know where to look. Most bacteria, though, exist in that middle ground of microscopic life, small enough to slip through the tiniest spaces, yet large enough to carry out all the complex chemistry of living. Perhaps most fascinating is how bacteria sense and respond to their world. Without eyes, ears, or any familiar sensory organs, they've developed exquisitely sensitive molecular detection systems. They can taste chemical gradients in their environment, feeling their way toward food sources or away from harmful substances. Some bacteria are even sensitive to light, magnetic fields, or electrical currents, using these environmental cues to navigate their microscopic landscape. And then there's the question of bacterial intelligence. Though perhaps intelligence isn't quite the right word. Bacteria don't think in any way we'd recognize, but they do process information, make decisions, and solve problems. A bacterium can assess its environment, weigh different options, and choose the most beneficial course of action. It might decide to swim toward a food source, form a protective biofilm with its neighbors, or even sacrifice itself for the good of the colony. This decision-making happens through elegant molecular circuits, networks of proteins that switch on and off in response to environmental conditions. It's like having a computer made of molecules, processing information and generating responses without any conscious awareness. The bacterium doesn't know it's making decisions, but it makes them nonetheless, guided by billions of years of evolutionary fine-tuning. What emerges from all this complexity is a picture of bacteria, not as simple, primitive life forms, but as sophisticated, successful organisms that have mastered the art of living. They've stripped away everything unnecessary while perfecting everything essential. They've learned to be flexible yet stable, simple yet capable, small yet mighty. They are, in many ways, life distilled to its essence, and they've been quietly perfecting this essence for billions of years. So the next time you think about bacteria, perhaps you might picture them not as invisible threats, but as microscopic masters of survival, each one a tiny testament to the ingenuity of life itself. They may be small, but they figured out something profound, that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most elegant ones. Take a moment, if you will, to consider where you are right now. Perhaps you're tucked into bed, settled in a comfortable chair, or curled up somewhere peaceful and warm. Now imagine that in this very space, in the air you're breathing, on every surface around you, even on and inside your own body, there exists an entire universe of life so abundant, it defies imagination. This is the bacterial universe, invisible to our eyes, but more populous and diverse than any ecosystem we can see. Let's start with the air itself, that seemingly empty space between you and the world. Every breath you take contains thousands, sometimes millions, of bacteria floating like microscopic dust motes on invisible currents. They drift down from the upper atmosphere, rise up from soil and water, and travel on every breeze. Some have journeyed across continents, carried by wind patterns that circle the globe. Others have just emerged from nearby plants or been stirred up from the ground beneath your feet. The air is never empty. It's a vast, three-dimensional ocean teeming with bacterial life. Soil, meanwhile, is perhaps the richest bacterial habitat on Earth. A single teaspoon of garden soil contains more bacteria than there are people on our entire planet. Roughly 100 million to 1 billion individual cells, representing thousands of different species. These underground communities are incredibly complex, with bacteria filling every conceivable ecological niche. Some break down fallen leaves and dead roots, recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem. Others form partnerships with plant roots, helping them absorb minerals from the soil. Still others hunt other microorganisms, maintaining the delicate balance of this subterranean world. Water, too, pulses with bacterial life. Ocean water contains roughly 1 million bacteria per milliliter. That's about 20 million bacteria in a single tablespoon. Rivers, lakes, puddles, even the morning dew on grass blades, all harbor thriving bacterial communities. These aquatic bacteria form the base of marine food webs, converting dissolved nutrients into living biomass that feeds everything from tiny zooplankton to massive whales. In many ways, the ocean's bacterial communities are what keep marine ecosystems running, processing nutrients and energy with quiet efficiency. But perhaps the most intimate bacterial universe is the one that lives with you, on you, and inside you. Your body hosts roughly as many bacterial cells as human cells. Some estimates suggest the numbers are about equal, making you as much a bacterial ecosystem as a human being. This collection of microbial partners, called your microbiome, is as unique as your fingerprint and plays crucial roles in keeping you healthy. Your skin alone hosts millions of bacteria representing hundreds of species. Different areas of your body provide different environments. The oily regions of your face favor certain bacteria, while the dry areas of your arms support different communities. Your armpits, with their warm, moist conditions, harbor bacteria that are quite different from those living between your toes. It's like having multiple ecosystems distributed across the landscape of your body, each adapted to its particular environment. Inside your digestive system lives an even more complex bacterial community. Trillions of microorganisms that help break down food, synthesize vitamins, train your immune system, and even influence your mood and behavior. These intestinal bacteria are so important that scientists sometimes refer to them as an additional organ, essential for proper human function. Without them, you couldn't properly digest many foods or absorb certain nutrients. In a very real sense, you and your bacterial partners have co-evolved together, each depending on the other for optimal health. Even in the most extreme environments on Earth, bacteria quietly thrive. In the scalding waters of hot springs, where temperatures would instantly kill most life forms, specialized bacteria called thermophiles make their homes, their proteins and membranes adapted to remain stable at temperatures that would cook an egg. In the frigid Antarctic ice, psychrophilic bacteria live in a slow-motion world. Their metabolism adjusted to function in conditions that would freeze most living things solid. Deep underground, miles beneath the Earth's surface, bacteria live in solid rock, extracting energy from minerals and chemicals in an environment that sees no sunlight and experiences crushing pressure. These deep subsurface bacteria may represent one of the largest ecosystems on our planet, though we're only beginning to understand their true extent and importance. Perhaps most remarkably, bacteria have even been found thriving in environments we once thought were sterile. The upper atmosphere, several miles above Earth's surface, hosts bacterial communities that somehow survive intense radiation and extreme cold. These high-altitude bacteria may play roles in weather patterns and cloud formation that we're only beginning to appreciate. All of these bacterial communities in air, soil, water, and living bodies are connected in ways both obvious and subtle. Bacteria from soil can become airborne and seed new communities in distant locations. Marine bacteria influence weather patterns that affect terrestrial ecosystems. The bacteria in your gut can be influenced by the bacteria in your environment, creating a continuous exchange between your internal ecosystem and the wider microbial world. What emerges from this vast, interconnected bacterial universe is a picture of life on Earth that's far more microbial than we typically imagine. The visible world of plants and animals, impressive as it is, sits atop a foundation of bacterial life that has been here far longer and in far greater abundance. These microscopic communities process the nutrients, generate the gases, and maintain the chemical cycles that make all other life possible. So as you settle in for the evening, surrounded by this invisible abundance, perhaps you might feel a gentle sense of wonder at the remarkable complexity of the microbial world that shares this moment with you. You're never truly alone. You're always part of something larger, quieter, and more ancient than yourself. Part of a bacterial universe that has been quietly sustaining life on Earth for billions of years and will continue long after we're gone. Now let's take a gentle step into the daily life of a bacterium. Though daily might not be quite the right word for creatures that can live their entire lives in a matter of minutes. Imagine, if you will, existing in a world where everything happens at lightning speed, where a single generation might last just 20 minutes, and where the very act of living is a constant dance with chemistry itself. Bacteria live fast and reproduce faster. Unlike us, with our long childhoods and careful courtships, bacteria have streamlined the process of making more bacteria into something beautifully efficient. Most bacteria reproduce through a process called binary fission. Essentially, they make a copy of all their genetic material, grow a bit larger, and then simply split in half. Parent becomes two identical children, each carrying the complete blueprint for bacterial life. This might sound simple, but there's elegant precision in the process. The bacterium must first duplicate its DNA with remarkable accuracy, ensuring each daughter cell receives a perfect copy of the genetic instructions. Then it must coordinate the growth of its cell membrane and wall, carefully managing the split so that both new cells end up with everything they need to survive. It's like a microscopic magic trick performed millions of times every day in every bacterial community on Earth. But perhaps most remarkable is the speed at which this happens. Under ideal conditions, some bacteria can double their population every 20 minutes. This means that a single bacterium could theoretically produce over 1 million descendants in just 7 hours. Of course, this rarely happens in nature. Resources are limited, space is finite, and other organisms have their own survival needs. But the potential is there, a testament to the incredible efficiency of bacterial reproduction. Bacteria don't just reproduce though, they communicate. And here's where things get beautifully complex. These seemingly simple organisms have developed sophisticated methods of chemical communication that allow them to coordinate behavior across entire communities. Through a process called quorum sensing, bacteria can literally count their neighbors and adjust their behavior accordingly. Picture this. Individual bacteria release tiny amounts of chemical signals into their environment, like microscopic whispers in a crowded room. As the bacterial population grows, the concentration of these signals increases. When it reaches a certain threshold, the bacteria suddenly shift their behavior, switching on genes that were previously dormant. They might start producing light, forming protective biofilms, or releasing toxins, all in coordinated response to the density of their community. This is bacterial democracy in action, where individual cells vote with chemistry, and the collective makes decisions based on population consensus. It's how bacteria know when there are enough of them to overwhelm a host's immune system, or when it's time to form those complex, multicellular structures we call biofilms. Biofilms are perhaps the most remarkable example of bacterial cooperation. These are communities where different types of bacteria work together, each contributing specialized skills to the collective effort. Some bacteria in the biofilm might specialize in gathering nutrients, others in waste disposal, still others in defense against threats. They build elaborate structures using sticky polymers, creating protective cities that can be incredibly difficult to dislodge. You've actually encountered biofilms, though you might not have realized it. That slippery coating on river rocks, the stubborn plaque on teeth despite diligent brushing, even the slimy layer that forms in shower drains. These are all biofilms, complex bacterial communities that have organized themselves for mutual benefit. But bacteria aren't just social within their own species. They're remarkably generous with genetic information across species boundaries. Through processes like conjugation, transformation, and transduction, bacteria can share genetic material with completely unrelated organisms. It's as if they have a planetary library system where useful innovations can be borrowed and shared freely. This genetic flexibility gives bacteria an extraordinary ability to adapt to changing conditions. When faced with a new antibiotic, for instance, bacteria that have developed resistance can share that resistance with their neighbors, even with different species entirely. It's horizontal gene transfer on a massive scale, allowing bacterial communities to evolve and adapt far more quickly than organisms that rely solely on vertical inheritance from parent to offspring. Bacteria also display remarkable problem-solving abilities. When nutrients become scarce, some bacteria can enter a dormant state called sporulation, essentially creating nearly indestructible time capsules that can survive for years, decades, or even centuries until conditions improve. Others can literally eat their neighbors, breaking down dead or dying cells to extract nutrients for survival. Some bacteria have developed even more sophisticated survival strategies. Certain species can differentiate into specialized cell types. Much like the cells in multicellular organisms, some become motile scouts that search for new food sources. Others become sessile anchors that maintain the community's position. And still others become reproductive specialists focused only on creating the next generation. Perhaps most impressive is bacterial memory. Not conscious memory, of course, but chemical memory stored in gene expression patterns. Bacteria can remember previous environmental conditions and prepare for similar situations in the future. They can anticipate seasonal changes, prepare for periodic threats, and even pass these chemical memories on to their offspring. And then there's bacterial aging, a concept that might seem contradictory for organisms that reproduce by splitting in half. Recent research has revealed that even bacteria experience a form of aging, with older cells accumulating molecular damage that gets passed asymmetrically to their offspring. One daughter cell inherits the damage and ages more quickly, while the other starts fresh. A remarkable strategy for maintaining population vitality. Throughout all of this, the rapid reproduction, the chemical communication, the cooperative behaviors, the genetic sharing, bacteria maintain their essential simplicity. They've managed to develop complex social behaviors and sophisticated survival strategies without abandoning the minimalist design that has served them so well for billions of years. It's a bit like watching a master artist at work, creating complex, beautiful compositions using only the most basic tools. Bacteria have taken the fundamental components of life and arranged them in countless ways, each arrangement perfectly suited to its particular environment and circumstances. They live fast, adapt quickly, and cooperate extensively, all while maintaining the elegant simplicity that makes them perhaps the most successful life forms our planet has ever known. So as you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you might spare a thought for the countless bacterial communities around you, each individual living its brief, intense life, reproducing, communicating, and cooperating in the ancient dance of survival that has been going on for billions of years and will continue long after we're gone. There's something deeply peaceful about decay. Not the sad sort that speaks of endings, but the gentle, necessary kind that whispers of renewal. In the quiet corners of the world, under fallen logs, in compost piles, beneath autumn leaves, bacteria are performing one of nature's most essential services, breaking down what was into what will be again. If Earth had a job description for bacteria, chief recycler would certainly be at the top of the list. Every leaf that falls, every creature that dies, every bit of organic waste that accumulates anywhere on our planet, bacteria are there, quietly and efficiently dismantling complex molecules and returning their components to the great cycles of life. Imagine, if you will, a fallen tree in a forest. To our eyes, it might appear to be simply lying there, slowly crumbling over months and years. But at the microscopic level, it's a bustling metropolis of bacterial activity. Different species of bacteria specialize in breaking down different components. Some excel at dismantling cellulose, the tough structural material that gives wood its strength. Others focus on lignin, the complex polymer that makes trees rigid and long-lasting. Still others work on proteins, fats, and other organic compounds. This isn't random destruction. It's highly organized molecular recycling. Each bacterial species has evolved specific enzymes, those remarkable protein machines that can slice through chemical bonds with surgical precision. These enzymes are so specialized that they often work on only one type of molecule, like molecular locksmiths with keys that fit only specific locks. As the bacteria work, they release the building blocks that were locked away in the tree's tissues. Carbon returns to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, where it can be captured again by growing plants. Nitrogen compounds become available to fertilize new growth. Phosphorus, sulfur, and countless other elements flow back into the soil, ready to nourish the next generation of forest life. This process, which scientists call decomposition, is actually a series of carefully orchestrated steps. First come the bacteria that prefer fresh organic matter, organisms that can handle the slightly acidic conditions and compete with other microbes for the choicest nutrients. As conditions change, becoming more alkaline, more oxygen depleted, or more concentrated with waste products, different bacterial communities take over, each perfectly adapted to their particular stage of the recycling process. It's a bit like a relay race that's been running for billions of years, with each bacterial team passing the molecular baton to the next, ensuring that nothing useful is ever truly lost. And the scale of this recycling operation is staggering. Bacteria process billions of tons of organic matter every year, breaking down everything from microscopic plankton in the ocean to massive trees in ancient forests. But bacteria don't just recycle dead organic matter. They're also essential players in the great chemical cycles that keep our planet's ecosystems running. Take nitrogen, for instance, an element that's absolutely essential for life, but exists mostly in a form that most organisms can't use. The nitrogen gas that makes up about 78% of our atmosphere might as well be locked in a vault as far as most plants and animals are concerned. Enter the nitrogen-fixing bacteria, remarkable organisms that have evolved the ability to crack open those stubborn nitrogen-nitrogen bonds and convert atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia, a form that plants can actually absorb and use. This process requires enormous amounts of energy. Fixing nitrogen is one of the most energy-intensive biochemical processes known, but these bacterial specialists handle it with quiet efficiency. Some nitrogen-fixing bacteria live freely in soil and water, essentially providing free fertilizer to any plants lucky enough to grow nearby. Others have entered into intimate partnerships with plants, particularly legumes like peas, beans, and clover. These bacterial partners take up residence in specialized root nodules, trading fixed nitrogen for carbohydrates and other nutrients provided by their plant hosts. It's a beautiful example of mutualism, where both partners benefit from their ancient collaboration. At the other end of the nitrogen cycle, different bacteria specialize in denitrification, converting nitrogen compounds back into nitrogen gas and returning it to the atmosphere. Without these bacterial recyclers, nitrogen would gradually accumulate in soil and water, eventually reaching toxic levels that would poison entire ecosystems. Bacteria perform similar recycling services for virtually every element essential to life. They mobilize phosphorus from rock and bone, cycle sulfur through soil and water, and even help regulate the carbon cycle that influences our planet's climate. Some bacteria can extract energy from iron, manganese, and other metals, slowly weathering rocks and making mineral nutrients available to other organisms. Perhaps most remarkably, bacteria have learned to recycle in environments where nothing else can survive. In the deep ocean, where no sunlight penetrates, bacterial communities cluster around hydrothermal vents, processing the chemical soup that emerges from Earth's interior. They break down hydrogen sulfide and other compounds that would be toxic to most life forms, creating the foundation for entire ecosystems that exist independently of solar energy. Even in contaminated environments, oil spills, polluted groundwater, industrial waste sites, specialized bacteria often emerge as nature's cleanup crew. Some bacteria can literally eat petroleum, breaking down complex hydrocarbons into harmless water and carbon dioxide. Others can neutralize heavy metals, radioactive compounds, and synthetic chemicals that human technology has introduced to the environment. This bacterial recycling isn't just environmentally beneficial, it's absolutely essential for life on Earth. Without bacterial decomposers, dead organic matter would accumulate endlessly, locking away essential nutrients and eventually choking ecosystems with waste. The carbon cycle would grind to a halt, the nitrogen cycle would collapse, and the delicate chemical balance that supports life would quickly unravel. In many ways, bacteria serve as Earth's circulatory system, keeping essential elements flowing between the living and non-living worlds. They ensure that death feeds life, that waste becomes resource, that the end of one story becomes the beginning of another. They maintain the great cycles that connect soil to plants, to animals, to atmosphere and back again, weaving the web of relationships that sustains our biosphere. So the next time you see a decomposing log, a compost pile, or even just dirt under your fingernails, perhaps you might appreciate the quiet work being done by countless bacterial recyclers. They're not just breaking things down, they're keeping the world running, one molecule at a time, maintaining the ancient cycles that have sustained life for billions of years and will continue long after we're gone. There's something comforting in that continuity, in knowing that the elements that make up our bodies will someday feed new life, processed by the same bacterial communities that have been quietly recycling the world since life began. We are all temporary arrangements of ancient atoms, borrowed from the earth and eventually returned to it, thanks to the patient work of bacteria that ensure nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed. Let's take a gentle wander into one of nature's most remarkable stories, the tale of partnership, cooperation, and quiet collaboration that has been unfolding for billions of years. It's a love story, really, between bacteria and the rest of life on Earth, though neither party probably realizes just how romantic their relationship has become. You are, at this very moment, the result of one of evolution's most successful partnerships. Those mitochondria in your cells, the tiny powerhouses that convert oxygen and sugar into the energy that keeps you alive, were once free-living bacteria that somewhere in the distant past decided to move in with another type of cell. It wasn't conquest or invasion, but something more like the ultimate roommate arrangement, where both parties discovered they were better together than apart. Picture this ancient moment, perhaps 2 billion years ago. A larger cell engulfs a smaller bacterium, perhaps intending to digest it for dinner. But something remarkable happens instead. The bacterium survives inside its host, and both cells discover unexpected benefits from their new arrangement. The bacterium, safely sheltered inside its host, shares the energy it produces from oxygen. The host cell, in return, provides protection and nutrients. Over time, this temporary arrangement becomes permanent, and eventually, the bacterium becomes so integrated into its host that it can no longer survive independently. This process, called endosymbiosis, fundamentally changed the trajectory of life on Earth. Those ancient bacterial partners became the mitochondria that power every animal cell, including yours. In plants, a similar partnership with cyanobacteria created chloroplasts, the green organelles that capture sunlight and convert it into energy. Essentially, the complexity of life as we know it, from towering redwoods to tiny hummingbirds to human beings, was made possible by bacterial partnerships that began billions of years ago. But endosymbiosis is just one chapter in the ongoing story of bacterial cooperation. All around you, bacteria are forming partnerships with plants, animals, and other organisms in relationships so beneficial that the partners can barely survive without each other. Consider the quiet collaboration happening beneath your feet in any garden or forest. Plant roots are surrounded by communities of bacteria that have essentially become external extensions of the plant's nutrient-gathering system. These rhizosphere bacteria, as they're called, help plants absorb nutrients from soil, protect them from pathogens, and even communicate chemical signals that influence plant growth and development. Some of these partnerships are particularly elegant. Legume plants, beans, peas, clover, and their relatives host nitrogen-fixing bacteria in specialized root nodules that look like tiny pink pearls. The bacteria provide the plant with nitrogen fertilizer made from atmospheric nitrogen gas, while the plant supplies the bacteria with carbohydrates and other nutrients. It's such an efficient arrangement that legume crops can actually improve soil fertility, leaving it richer in nitrogen than they found it. Mycorrhizal relationships, while technically involving fungi rather than bacteria, often include bacterial partners that help facilitate these underground networks. Trees in forests are connected by vast fungal webs that share nutrients, water, and even chemical warning signals between different plants. Bacteria play supporting roles in these networks, helping process nutrients and maintain the health of the fungal partners. But perhaps nowhere is the partnership between bacteria and complex life more intimate than in the human gut. Your digestive system hosts a community of bacteria so diverse and numerous that they're sometimes called your second genome. These bacterial partners help digest foods that your own enzymes cannot break down, synthesize vitamins that your body needs but cannot make, train your immune system to distinguish between helpful and harmful microorganisms, and even influence your mood and behavior through chemical signals that reach your brain. The relationship between humans and gut bacteria is so close that we've essentially co-evolved together. Your bacterial partners have adapted to the specific environment of your digestive system, while your immune system has learned to tolerate and even protect these beneficial microorganisms. When this partnership is disrupted by antibiotics, illness, or dietary changes, both you and your bacterial partners suffer. Recent research has revealed just how extensive this bacterial partnership really is. Gut bacteria help regulate your metabolism, influence your weight, affect your susceptibility to certain diseases, and may even play a role in conditions like depression and anxiety. The phrase gut feeling might be more literally accurate than we ever imagined, as bacteria in your digestive system produce neurotransmitters that can influence your emotional state. These partnerships extend far beyond individual organisms to entire ecosystems. Coral reefs, those spectacular underwater cities, depend on partnerships between coral animals, photosynthetic algae, and communities of bacteria that help process nutrients and protect against disease. When these bacterial communities are disrupted, often by pollution, temperature changes, or ocean acidification, coral reefs begin to bleach and die. Even in the vast ocean, bacterial partnerships sustain life in ways we're only beginning to understand. Many marine animals, from tiny zooplankton to massive whales, host bacterial partners that help them digest food, synthesize essential nutrients, or even produce light through bioluminescence. Some deep-sea creatures depend entirely on bacterial partners for nutrition, hosting chemosynthetic bacteria that can extract energy from chemical compounds in environments where photosynthesis is impossible. The story of bacterial partnership isn't always harmonious, of course. Some bacteria have evolved to be parasites or pathogens, causing disease rather than providing benefits. But even these relationships often represent partnerships gone wrong, rather than fundamentally different strategies. Many bacterial pathogens are closely related to beneficial bacteria, and the line between partnership and parasitism can sometimes be surprisingly thin. What's remarkable about all these partnerships is that they weren't planned or designed. They emerged through the simple process of natural selection, favoring arrangements that benefited both partners. Over millions and billions of years, bacteria and other organisms have found countless ways to cooperate, creating relationships so beneficial that the partners often cannot survive without each other. These partnerships also demonstrate the fundamental interconnectedness of life on Earth. We tend to think of ourselves as independent organisms, but we're actually complex ecosystems, communities of different life forms, working together in elaborate cooperation. The bacteria that live with us, on us, and inside us are not just passengers or tenants. They're essential partners in the ongoing experiment of life. As you settle in for the evening, Perhaps you might take a moment to appreciate the quiet collaboration happening all around you and within you. Your bacterial partners are working even as you rest, helping digest your dinner, synthesizing vitamins, maintaining your health. The plants around you are sharing resources with their bacterial partners underground. The entire biosphere is humming with partnerships that have been refined over billions of years of evolution. There's something deeply comforting in this interconnectedness, in knowing that no organism, not even humans with all our technology and culture, succeeds alone. We are all part of a vast web of cooperation that stretches back to the very beginning of life on Earth and forward into whatever future we create together. Now, here's where our gentle story takes a more complex turn, though not a frightening one. While we've been wandering through the wonderful world of bacterial partnerships and recycling, it's only fair to acknowledge that bacteria don't always play nicely. Sometimes, these ancient microorganisms can indeed cause problems: illness, infection, and disease. But even this troublesome side of bacterial life has its own fascinating story, one that reveals as much about the intricate balance of life as it does about the nature of bacterial behavior. Let's begin with a comforting truth. The vast majority of bacteria are either completely harmless to humans or actively beneficial. Of the millions of bacterial species that exist on Earth, only a tiny fraction, perhaps a few thousand, are capable of causing disease in humans. It's a bit like living in a city of millions where only a handful of residents might cause you trouble. The odds are overwhelmingly in your favor. But why do some bacteria cause problems while their relatives live peacefully alongside us? The answer often lies in context, environment, and the delicate balance of ecosystems both within and around our bodies. Many bacterial pathogens aren't inherently evil. They're simply organisms trying to survive and reproduce, using strategies that happen to conflict with our own well-being. Consider Streptococcus pneumoniae, a bacterium that can cause pneumonia, meningitis, and other serious infections. Yet this same bacterium lives peacefully in the nasal passages of about 10% of healthy adults, causing no problems whatsoever. It only becomes troublesome when conditions change, when the immune system is compromised, when it travels to parts of the body where it doesn't belong, or when the normal bacterial community that keeps it in check is disrupted. This illustrates one of the key principles of bacterial pathogenesis. Location matters enormously. E. coli bacteria are essential members of your intestinal community, helping with digestion and competing with harmful microorganisms. But if these same bacteria find their way into your urinary tract or bloodstream, they can cause serious infections. They haven't become evil. They're simply in the wrong place, like dinner guests who've wandered into the bedroom and are now causing chaos. The concept of bacterial balance is crucial to understanding when bacteria cause trouble. Your body hosts trillions of bacteria in a complex ecosystem where different species keep each other in check. When this balance is disrupted, perhaps by antibiotics that kill beneficial bacteria along with harmful ones, or by illness that compromises your immune system, opportunistic bacteria can suddenly multiply and cause problems. This is why antibiotic-associated diarrhea is so common. Antibiotics don't just kill the harmful bacteria they're targeting. They often wipe out beneficial gut bacteria as well. This creates an opening for problematic bacteria like Clostridium difficile to establish themselves and multiply, sometimes causing severe intestinal infections. It's an unintended consequence of disrupting the bacterial ecosystem that normally maintains digestive health. Some bacteria have evolved more aggressive strategies for survival, developing specific mechanisms that allow them to invade tissues, evade immune responses, or produce toxins that damage host cells. These are the bacteria we typically think of as pathogens, organisms like Salmonella, which can cause food poisoning, or Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which causes tuberculosis. But even these more aggressive bacteria often represent evolutionary compromises. Many bacterial pathogens actually benefit from keeping their hosts alive and mobile, as this helps them spread to new hosts. The common cold viruses and bacteria that cause mild respiratory infections, for instance, have evolved to cause just enough symptoms, sneezing, coughing, to help them spread, without making their host so sick that they can't go about their daily activities. The relationship between bacteria and disease is also deeply influenced by human behavior and environmental conditions. Many bacterial infections that were once common killers, cholera, typhoid, plague, are now rare in developed countries, not because the bacteria have become less dangerous, but because we've improved sanitation, water treatment, and living conditions. These diseases persist in parts of the world where poverty, poor infrastructure, or conflict have disrupted the systems that keep harmful bacteria in check. Antibiotic resistance represents perhaps the most concerning aspect of bacterial troublemaking in the modern world. Bacteria's remarkable ability to share genetic information and adapt quickly to new challenges, the same flexibility that has made them so successful as partners and recyclers, also allows them to develop resistance to antibiotics with alarming speed. This isn't bacteria being malicious, it's simply natural selection in action. When antibiotics kill most bacteria in a population, any individuals with genetic mutations that confer resistance will survive and reproduce. Through horizontal gene transfer, these resistance genes can then spread to other bacteria, even different species. Over time, antibiotic use creates selective pressure that favors resistant bacteria. The result is the emergence of superbugs, bacteria that are resistant to multiple antibiotics and can cause infections that are extremely difficult to treat. Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, vancomycin-resistant Enterococci, VRE, and extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis are examples of bacteria that have essentially evolved faster than our ability to develop new antibiotics. But even this challenge reveals something remarkable about bacterial adaptability. Some bacteria have evolved resistance mechanisms so sophisticated that they can break down antibiotics, pump them out of their cells, or alter their own cellular targets to make antibiotics ineffective. It's a molecular arms race that has been going on for billions of years. Antibiotics, after all, were originally developed by bacteria and fungi as weapons against their microbial competitors. Understanding bacterial troublemaking has led to more sophisticated approaches to managing bacterial infections. Rather than simply trying to kill all bacteria, modern medicine increasingly focuses on maintaining healthy bacterial communities, using probiotics to restore beneficial bacteria, and developing targeted therapies that disrupt specific bacterial behaviors without causing widespread ecological damage. There's also growing recognition that many bacterial infections represent failures of prevention rather than inevitable encounters with malevolent microorganisms. Hand hygiene, food safety, vaccination, and maintaining healthy immune systems remain our best defenses against bacterial problems, not because bacteria are enemies to be defeated, but because they're natural forces to be managed and balanced. Perhaps most importantly, the story of bacterial troublemaking reminds us that health is fundamentally about balance and context. The same bacteria that can cause serious illness under some circumstances may be harmless or even beneficial under others. Our relationship with bacteria isn't a war to be won, but an ongoing negotiation between different life forms sharing the same planet. As you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you might find comfort in knowing that while bacteria can indeed cause problems, these problems often arise from imbalances that can be prevented or corrected. Your immune system, refined over millions of years of co-evolution with bacteria, is remarkably good at maintaining the partnerships that benefit you while defending against those that don't. Most of the time, this ancient dance between humans and bacteria proceeds smoothly, with beneficial partnerships far outnumbering problematic encounters. The bacteria that cause trouble are simply organisms following their own evolutionary imperatives, trying to survive and reproduce in a complex world. Understanding their strategies doesn't make them less dangerous when they threaten our health, but it does help us develop more effective and sustainable approaches to managing the eternal dance between human health and bacterial survival. Let's take a gentle step forward in time, shall we? Not far, just a few decades into a future where humanity has learned to work even more closely with our ancient bacterial partners. It's a future that's quietly taking shape in laboratories and research centers around the world, where scientists are discovering that bacteria might hold keys to some of our most pressing challenges. Picture, if you will, a world where bacteria help clean up environmental disasters with the same efficiency they've shown in recycling organic matter for billions of years. This isn't science fiction. It's already beginning to happen. In laboratories and pilot projects around the globe, researchers are cultivating bacteria that can literally eat pollution, breaking down oil spills, toxic chemicals, and even plastic waste into harmless compounds. Some bacteria have shown remarkable appetites for petroleum products, munching through oil spills and leaving behind nothing but water and carbon dioxide. Others can neutralize heavy metals, radioactive compounds, and industrial chemicals that would otherwise persist in the environment for decades or centuries. These bacterial cleanup crews, known as bioremediation specialists, represent a gentler approach to environmental restoration, using life to heal the damage that human activity has caused. Perhaps even more remarkably, scientists are engineering bacteria to tackle one of the modern world's most persistent problems: plastic pollution. Researchers have discovered and modified bacteria that can break down common plastics like PET, the material in water bottles, and polyurethane, essentially turning plastic waste into food for bacterial communities. Imagine plastic bottles that could be composted just like banana peels, broken down by bacterial recyclers into nutrients for soil. In the realm of medicine, bacteria are being transformed from occasional adversaries into sophisticated therapeutic allies. Scientists are developing smart bacteria that can be programmed to seek out and destroy cancer cells, deliver drugs precisely where they're needed, or even manufacture medicines inside the human body. These therapeutic bacteria could potentially treat diseases that are currently difficult or impossible to cure with conventional medicines. One particularly elegant approach involves engineering bacteria to act as living drug factories. Instead of manufacturing medicines in industrial facilities and then delivering them to patients, researchers are creating bacteria that can produce therapeutic compounds directly inside the body, in precisely the right amounts and exactly where they're needed. It's like having a personalized pharmaceutical factory working at the cellular level. Bacteria are also being recruited to help address global food security. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria, which have been fertilizing soils naturally for billions of years, are being studied and improved to reduce agriculture's dependence on synthetic fertilizers. Some researchers are working to transfer the ability to fix nitrogen to crops like corn and wheat, which would essentially allow these plants to fertilize themselves using atmospheric nitrogen. Other bacteria are being developed to protect crops from pests and diseases, offering alternatives to chemical pesticides that can harm beneficial insects and contaminate soil and water. These biological control agents work by outcompeting harmful microorganisms, producing natural antibiotics, or stimulating plant immune systems. Approaches that are often more sustainable and environmentally friendly than chemical alternatives. In the emerging field of synthetic biology, bacteria are being transformed into living computers, capable of processing information, making decisions, and responding to environmental conditions in programmable ways. These biological computers could be used for environmental monitoring, automatically detecting and responding to pollution or disease outbreaks. They might serve as living sensors that could be distributed throughout ecosystems to provide real-time information about environmental health. Bacteria are also becoming partners in space exploration. NASA and other space agencies are studying how bacterial communities might help sustain human life during long-term space missions. Bacteria could potentially recycle waste, produce food and medicines, and even help terraform other planets by gradually transforming hostile environments into more habitable ones. The food industry is discovering new ways to harness bacterial capabilities for producing everything from meat alternatives to novel flavors and nutrients. Some bacteria can be engineered to produce proteins that are identical to those found in animal meat, potentially offering sustainable alternatives to livestock farming. Others can synthesize vitamins, amino acids, and other nutrients that are typically difficult or expensive to produce. Perhaps most intriguingly, bacteria are being studied as potential solutions to climate change. Some bacteria can capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and convert it into useful compounds, essentially acting as biological carbon capture systems. Others can produce biofuels that could replace fossil fuels, using sunlight and simple nutrients to generate energy-rich compounds. Researchers are also exploring how bacterial communities in soil might be managed to increase carbon storage, potentially turning agricultural lands into carbon sinks that could help offset greenhouse gas emissions. The same bacteria that have been recycling nutrients for billions of years might help us recycle excess atmospheric carbon back into soil and biomass. The pharmaceutical industry is increasingly looking to bacteria as sources of new medicines. Many of our most important antibiotics, from penicillin to streptomycin, were originally discovered in bacteria and fungi. As antibiotic resistance becomes more challenging, researchers are exploring the vast diversity of bacterial secondary metabolites, chemicals that bacteria produce for communication, competition, and protection, as sources of new therapeutic compounds. But perhaps the most profound implication of our growing partnership with bacteria lies in how it might change our understanding of life itself. As we learn to work more closely with bacterial communities, we're beginning to see ecosystems, human health, and even global climate as fundamentally microbial phenomena. Complex networks of bacterial relationships that we're only beginning to understand. This perspective suggests that the future of sustainability, health, and environmental stewardship might depend not on conquering or controlling bacteria, but on learning to work with them as partners in managing the planet's biological systems. Instead of seeing bacteria as something separate from us, we might learn to see ourselves as participants in a vast bacterial world, where cooperation and symbiosis are the keys to long-term success. The future with bacteria isn't about replacing human technology with bacterial technology, but about combining them in ways that harness the best of both. Human creativity and planning, coupled with bacterial efficiency and adaptability, could create solutions that neither could achieve alone. As you settle into sleep tonight, perhaps you might dream of this bacterial future, a world where ancient microorganisms help heal the environment, cure diseases, feed the hungry, and even carry us to the stars. It's a future that's already quietly taking shape in laboratories around the world, built on the foundation of partnerships that began billions of years ago and continue to evolve with each passing day. The same bacteria that have been Earth's great recyclers, ecosystem engineers, and symbiotic partners throughout the history of life might yet prove to be our greatest allies in creating a sustainable future. After all, they've been solving complex problems and maintaining planetary systems for far longer than we've existed. Perhaps it's time we learn to be better students of their ancient wisdom. And so, friend, we arrive at the end of our gentle journey through the vast, invisible world of bacteria. We've wandered from cosmic origins to intimate ecosystems, from ancient partnerships to future possibilities. Along the way, we've discovered that bacteria aren't just microorganisms. They're teachers, partners, recyclers, and the quiet architects of life itself. We followed these remarkable beings from their first appearance 3.8 billion years ago, through their patient work of terraforming our planet, to their essential roles in every ecosystem on Earth. We've seen them recycle nutrients with elegant efficiency, form partnerships that span kingdoms of life, and adapt to challenges with breathtaking speed. Through it all, bacteria have remained beautifully humble, performing the essential work of maintaining our world without fanfare or recognition. Tonight, as you settle in and let your thoughts begin to drift, perhaps you'll carry a little more wonder for the bacterial universe around you. The breath you're taking, supported by oxygen, that ancient bacteria gifted to our atmosphere. The digestion quietly happening in your body, aided by trillions of microscopic partners. The soil outside your window, alive with bacterial communities that have been recycling life for eons. There's something deeply peaceful in recognizing our place within this bacterial world. We are not separate from it, but part of it, walking ecosystems in partnership with ancient life forms that have shaped our planet since the very beginning. And if you found any peace in this curious expedition, if the wonders of the microscopic world brought you calm, or if these questions helped you drift gently into your dreams, we'd be honored if you follow us for more wandering journeys through the mysteries of science in the future. Sleep well, fellow traveler, and may your dreams be filled with the quiet marvels we've discovered together. Thanks for joining us here at Sleep Science.